boy was born as an ill-fated person and was predicted to die before the age of 3. However, he was taken in as a disciple by an old wizard. Every day, he fed on witchcraft, poisonous insects, and beasts of prey. Despite his doomed fate, he miraculously survived until the age of 18 with the company of fierce tigers and wild beasts. However, one day, his master suddenly informed him that he was powerless to help him anymore and that he had only 1 month left to live. Unless he could gather all the divine medicine listed on the scroll, he would surely die. In order to save his life, the fat man who had lived in the mountains for 18 years had to bid farewell to his master with tears and go down the mountain to search for medicine. Several pretty girls were in the same compartment on the train as the fat man, but he was too busy eating to pay attention to them. Suddenly, a cry for help was heard from outside the door. "Quick! Come and save Mr. Lin." The girls rushed out, and the fat man followed to see what was going on. Turned out to be an old man lying on the ground, bleeding profusely from his mouth and nose. After a medical examination by the doctor on the train, it was determined that he had a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and was beyond saving. The few girls burst into tears upon hearing the news. Turned out that they were students of Mr. Lin. However, the fat boy suddenly patted one of the girls on the shoulder and asked if the old man had offended anyone. The girls were confused and unable to answer. The fat boy immediately went to Mr. Lin and pressed his hand against his chest. The next second, they found a huge centipede inside him. This was clearly not a cerebral hemorrhage, but a curse. Since he had encountered this situation, he could not just stand by and watch. The fat boy then took out an embroidered needle from his waist and licked it on his tongue. He then plunged it into Mr. Lin's chest. Immediately after, a beam of golden light shot out from his ear, revealing a flying insect flapping its golden wings. Under his command, the flying insect swiftly darted into Mr. Lin's nostril. After a moment, the centipede panicked and crawled out. However, it was caught by the golden insect before it could escape. As people watching the scene were shocked, only the fat man remained calm. He picked up the centipede and threw it into the air, feeding it to the golden flying insect. "Eat it quickly, you're lucky this time," he said. Then he took out a blue-purple pill from his waist and fed it to Mr. Lin's mouth. The next second, Mr. Lin, who had been sentenced to death, suddenly opened his eyes and coughed up a mouthful of old blood. Looking at his face, it was much more ruddy. As a token of gratitude, Mr. Lin the fat man to a table full of food in his private room. The fat man was happy to eat as much as he could. During the meal, he asked if Mr. Lin had recently offended anyone, as there was no reason for someone to use such a vicious curse on him. Mr. Lin shook his head and explained that he was just a professor at a performing arts academy, and he had brought some students to make a movie. As there was no answer to the question, the fat man decided to stay in Lin's private room. As night fell, everyone in the compartment went to sleep. Suddenly, a man in a suit walked in and was about to attack Mr. Lin when the lights suddenly turned on. The fat man sat up from the bed. He had been waiting for the attacker. However, the man in the suit was not afraid because he came to deal with both of them. He ordered the guard, who was originally at the door, to move in front of the fat man in an instant, then threw out a giant centipede the size of an arm. This centipede was called the Yen Wang Qing, and anyone who touched it would die. However, the fat man lifted his hand and caught the centipede. He said that it would be delicious if it was grilled, but unfortunately they couldn't light a fire on the train. He then stuffed the centipede into his mouth and ate it in a few bites. The guard was stunned, wondering if the fat man was even human. Before he could react, the fat man grabbed him by the neck and killed him. Although the fat man appeared kind-hearted, he didn't hesitate to kill. After dealing with the person in front of him, he looked at the other guard at the door and asked if he was not going to attack. Unexpectedly, the guard knelt down on the ground with a thud and begged for forgiveness, saying that his father was a junior fellow apprentice of the fat man and that he was his disciple. He didn't know anything about it, so the fat man let him handle the body and leave quickly, and then turned to the already frightened man in the suit. After questioning him, they found out that he was an investor in the movie and wanted to take advantage of several female students. but was rejected by Mr. Lin, so he held a grudge and used witchcraft to harm them. The fat man didn't want to dirty his own hands with such a person, so he ordered Wu Ka to find a place with no one around, break the tendons and bones in the man's hands and feet, and throw him into the wilderness.